In South Africa, thousands of women and children face violence every single day. Behind every statistic is a story, a family, a life changed forever. For more than a century, the SAVF has stood as a pillar of hope, protection, and dignity, walking alongside survivors long before the 16 days of activism begins and long after it ends. At the SAVF, our mission is simple yet powerful: to protect the vulnerable, restore dignity, and empower survivors to rebuild their lives. Every year, thousands of South African women and children turn to the SAVF for safety, counseling, social support, and intervention. Our social workers stand at the front line, listening, guiding, and advocating when voices are silenced. Because GBV is not just a crime, it is a human rights violation, one that destroys families, futures, and communities. Through early intervention programs, trauma counseling, outreach services, safety planning, and partnerships with communities, SAVF offers survivors not only help, but hope. The 16 days of activism is more than a campaign. It is a call to action. A reminder that ending violence starts with all of us, in our homes, our schools, our workplaces, and our communities. You are not alone. At SAVF, someone is always ready to listen, support, and help you reclaim your strength. Stand with us, speak out, support survivors, choose courage, choose compassion, choose change. During these 16 days and every day, the SAVF stands firm against violence and for the future of every woman and child in South Africa.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. It is my privilege today to introduce Princess Eruika Mogane, a commissioner at the Commission for Gender Equality, appointed by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Princess Mogane is not only a leader, but she's also a movement. She has helped over 1,300 women rediscover their purpose. She balances the role of community builder, entrepreneur, mentor, life coach, and advocate for vulnerable groups. Her work reaches schools, villages, rural communities, and households across Mpumalanga, where she continues to fight gender-based violence, empower youth, and restore dignity among survivors. She is also the CEO of the Tarika in Beauty and Spa Center, the CEO of the Spa and Wellness Association of Africa, and the founder of the Tarika in Group, a purpose-led business built on the philosophy, don't chase money, serve purpose. Her accolades include Male and Guardian Top 200 Young South Africans, 40 Under 40 Africa Award, Honorary Entrepreneurship and Business, Golden Key International Honor Society Lifetime Membership, Scholarship at the University of Cambridge, and programs affiliated with the Duke University. But beyond all these, Princess Eruika Mogane is a leader of hearts, a voice for the voiceless, and a champion for women and children. Your Highness, thank you for being with us today. We are truly honored. I just want to, yes, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you so much, Lianke. I really appreciate that warm welcome. Thank you all so much for also hosting me. I appreciate it. You know, every time they read my bio, I always panic, like, is that me? Is that truly me? But I'm so thankful, and you know, it's such engagements that just revive that passion and that joy that we have when we do reach communities themselves. But thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you so much. So our first question that I want for you is that you have supported more than 1,300 women to find their purpose. In your experience, what is the first step a GBV survivor must take to reclaim her identity and confidence?
I believe the major thing that I've found as common in a lot of the victims that we've engaged with when it comes to then what, you know, perpetrator has been caught, justice has been served, what's the next step? And the first one is for them to, first of all, identify that, you know what, you are allowed to grieve. I think that's the biggest thing that we have noted, being able to also identify, some have to always say, what role did I play? And we have to walk that journey with them as well, for them to understand that you are never a key role player, you are never, you know, a stakeholder within this very, very graphic and very brutal encounter. Instead, you were someone who was violated, you were taken advantage of. So the first thing for us to not just also just make them be aware of where they are, their state of mind, but to help them define what is that identity that they have. It's very key for us to say that, you know what, you need to start being able to recognize yourself all over again, because any trauma changes an individual's psyche. It changes a person's perception about themselves and about everyone who's around them. So it's very key for us to know that self-recognition is very key. And then the second part that we also emphasize on is the self-permission. You know, saying what I am allowed to grieve, I am allowed to ask for help, I am allowed to feel guilty, I am allowed to introspect, but be cautious as well. So those are very key for us. The self-recognition, recognizing who you are outside or post the trauma is very key, because identity does shift based on what we experience. You know, our perception or our paradigms do change based on what we go through, positive or negative. So those are the biggest things we look at. Recognize yourself, see yourself in the mirror all over again. For those who have physical scars, you know, facial scars, we also have to teach them to start being comfortable with the different side of who they are, you know, learning to look at the inner coming out. So that is very key for us to definitely emphasize on. But those things are very key. And of course, the healing journey is different from one victim to the other. And for us, we always say they don't just, it's not just victims, you know, once, you know, the, you know, perpetrator has been caught, you move on being a victim to being, you know, you're the survivor and a hope ambassador, because now someone else will hear your story. So all of those things become part and parcel of that journey. Yes, Lianki.
And many survivors struggle with shame and silence. How do you
Yes.
think communities can create safe, non-judgmental spaces for women to speak out?
Well, looking at where individuals are coming from is very key as well, because, for example, those who are in deep rural areas, we have what we call the community gatekeepers. So those are traditional leaders, faith-based leaders. Those are the first point of contact they have before they even go and trust a counselor. They trust someone who's got psychological support that will be offered to them. So for us, the biggest things to, first of all, when you're creating these safe spaces, start with those who are their first point of contact. So that is definitely, we have to workshop all of these community gatekeepers who are there, because they are, you know, they play a very key role, a very massive role. So that's the first point for us to start. And then also, you know, we need to go back to that Ubuntu circle. Well, that's what we have created the site as well in Mpumalanga, that we need to have an Ubuntu circle where I know that there's this, you know, elderly wise woman in the community. If we go to her as a group, she will give the necessary counsel. So we target those women, or those community leaders as well, or elders of the community, and say, listen, do you know that there's a certain law? If you need help for certain things, you can go to Zela Care Center, you can go to SRF. They are here to offer that support. And then for those community members who are now within, you know, in more inland, in the towns, for those individuals, we definitely do encourage for them to go to places like yours, the SRF itself. We do encourage them to make use of other facilities that are available too. So it's very key for us to know who are the first point of contacts that they trust. We need to definitely workshop those people, because that's the first place that they feel safe. From then, they'll be ushered into the counseling sessions, they'll be ushered into the psychologists. But before then, they need someone who will walk this walk with them. Thank you.
Do you think those community members that you include, do they have any training, or how do you equip them to help the others?
So what we do from the commission, we have workshops that we do go into. So every traditional house, so we have an MOU with our Mpumalanga House of Traditional Leadership. So that means that we are tasked to ensure that we go from one traditional house to the next, training not just the chief and his wife or wives, but even the indunas, the headmen, you know, the others who are also trusted as part of the traditional councils, because those ones are also now nominated and put in traditional council leadership, because we have what we call tribal courts as well. So in those courts, that's where someone can come and say, listen, someone stole my cow, what do I do? And then that tribal court will have to now say, listen, you have been caught, you owe this man this amount of money, or you need to bring back. So we have those, systems set up already within deep rural areas. So we definitely do workshop them. When it comes to faith-based leaders, they have associations themselves that are grouped already. So we just ensure that we become part and parcel of those groupings or systems that they have in place. Thank you.
Then my next question for you. You often speak about restoring dignity. What does dignity restoration look like in practical, everyday terms for the GBV survivors?
So what we look into, Linky, is first of all, when we do encounter the individual, we need them to, as I said, self-recognition is very key. Being self-aware is very important because when you are violated, the first thing you feel is control was taken from me. It was stripped off of me. So what we encourage is, first of all, that someone will be able to do day to day, a process of, I need to be able to make my own decisions. So what we do with such individuals is that we provide opportunity for them to make choices. That is why it's very key for us to say when we train the gatekeepers, we say, listen, you can advise and counsel up to this far, but then open the question to say, listen, now are you ready to move to the next step? Make them feel that it is part and parcel of their decision making. Because as I said, after that violent encounter, the first thing they feel like they've been stripped of their ability to make sound decisions. So we have to create that platform for them to understand that you can make a choice to say, today I'll wake up, I am choosing to make my bed, I am choosing to apply makeup on, I am choosing to dress up a bit more for this session that I'll be having. All of those factors are things we encourage. And from then, as a counselor, as someone who's on the other side, that's where you encourage them and say, I see today you have chosen to do this. So using those keywords is very key. The next step is definitely providing the dignified accommodation. The dignified shelters are very important for them as well, because that's where they choose as well. Listen, I do need help. I am afraid of being in this community. I'm afraid of being in this space because maybe the uncle was actually the perpetrator and the uncle might have been a breadwinner. So now the whole family is angry at her for going to report the uncle. So what they need is definitely a dignified shelter. That's the next step of it. That is how we restore dignity to individuals. And then, of course, lastly, what I am very big on, restoring that economic stance, that social economic stance. They need to know that they can re-enter into society and feel that they can be independent. Very key for us to definitely be able to establish. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's necessary for the victims to also feel like they are worthy and they've been broken down so long that it really takes a lot of effort to help them to restore their dignity.
Yes.
You also combine entrepreneurship and healing. How can starting a small business or using one's skills help survivors build their life?
The biggest thing that we always say when we are talking to general entrepreneurship mentees is if you're an entrepreneur, it means that you are a solution bringer. You are here to solve a problem. And it comes back to how we restore dignity when we give them that ability to say that you have the power to make decisions, you have the power to be in control. And that's what business does as well. It gives, yes, it's very challenging and trying, but the fact that you have identified a problem in your community or in an area, and you have that sense of urgency to say, I can bring a solution, I'll bake bread and the people don't have to travel so far to be able to buy the bread. I'll be able to maybe even look after the children because I do not want, that other victimization to take place because I've seen what happens perhaps as a child victim once upon a time. So it's very key for the victims to be empowered enough to know that, whatever problems you've seen in society, what solutions are you willing to bring on the table? And not just solutions, but may they become profitable for you so that you'll be able to take a stand for you. Because one of the biggest things I've noted with all the victims or survivors that we've engaged with and our Hope ambassadors is that when they come back, they say, you know what, I will not allow another child, another individual to go through what I've gone through. And the question I would ask is then what will you do about it? What role are you going to play in society? to make that difference. Hence, we decided to shift them into the entrepreneurial side of things, because from there they'll become sustainable themselves. We equip them with the basic skills, we workshop them, we help them start, ground up. And there's quite a lot of testimonies that we get of individuals saying, what, I can now be able to even afford my own home. I can now be able to afford, taking my children to school. Those are things we celebrate, but it starts off with having to challenge someone, challenge their mindset as well, that outside of what you have seen and experienced, what role can you play to bring that answer as well through a sustainable business?
Yes, because we also know that gender-based violence is often linked to economic dependency.
Yes.
So what would you say are the best empowerment programs to help women gain financial independence?
One of the basic things that we do, first of all, is market relevant skills. Because you're looking right now, we've got AI coming into place as well. So for us, it's very key to remain as flexible as possible. So what we have started doing right now is that ensuring that all the skills development programs or trainings we have are in line with latest trends, what is taking place right now. For example, right now we're trying to bring women into the digital space, women into the digital AI space, because there are platforms where now someone will say, listen, I don't have time for photo shoot, but here's my photo, do something about it. And they're, these younger ones, they're very keen on those. So they're excited to do that. And then the elderly women, what we have started doing with them, for example, here in Mpumalanga as well, there's what we have the MTO group. So we encourage them, for example, Mpumalanga is more agriculture, it's forestry, it's tourism. So we encourage those skills that suit the area in itself, what is in demand in those different areas. And I think that's biggest space or step for us to start on. So what is the relevant skills that is required? We start off with that. And then of course, the biggest one is financial literacy training, because I can start the business, but am I able to manage the resources? Am I able to manage what comes in, the cash flow and so forth? Am I also keeping track of this data? Whether it be informal business or formal business, it's very key for us to have those skills. So we partner with a lot of our own stakeholders who help just to instill those skills. We have refresher workshops as well, which is very important for the survivors, because at times we also need to note that, some things are triggers. Some things are definitely triggers. So if we do not go back and have these refresher courses, a person will definitely give up along the way. So they might sound like it's redundant, but we do that often. And then of course, the basic mentoring and seed funding workshops are also very key for us. I know there's always a concern that no funding opportunities are just for youth, but there's so many other opportunities available. So we help draft proposals, draft, unsolicited, letters of request and of grants as well. So we do a lot with them. At the end of the day, is to teach them to be as independent as possible while developing themselves. Because what we want is post-trauma, you need to start reinvesting in yourself. Post-trauma, you need to start recreating and reshaping your own identity to be who you want it to be. Some say, I want to be fierce. Some say, listen, maybe the reason why they took advantage was because I'm not as, assertive as I should be. So we help develop those skills as well. So it also comes back to more, the character development as well. Thank you.
Yes, so with what you just said, I think the materialistic side of the survivors, like teaching them financial independency, is one of the things that's needed. But I would suggest, and you can help me if I'm wrong, that there's emotional needs that survivors have
Yes.
that we as society normally overlook. Can you tell us about that emotional needs?
That's very true. I think one of the biggest ones we can definitely talk about is the most commonly overlooked one, which is the need of validation for their grief. Trauma changes you, as I mentioned. You lose a certain part of you. You lose a certain innocence about you that you have. There's this, positive outlook you've had in life, but right now there's a shift that takes place. So that validation of someone's grief is very key, and we often overlook it. What we always tend to do is just say, stay strong. We are so proud of you. Keep on pushing, keep on. There are moments where they don't want to push. They do not want to be strong. They want to break. They want to cry. They want to throw their tantrums. And We need to be open and allow them to be in that space, because if we don't, we are making them jump certain milestones as well. We are rushing the process, and it's very, very unfair to them. And there are some individuals who come and say, but it happened 10 years ago. Come on, now surely you will feel fine.
Mm.
For her as a victim, for him as a victim, what they're thinking is it's 15 years sentencing that he got, so 5 years left, they'll be out. You see what's happening in their own minds. There's a lot of battles. They'll be released very soon. And when that happens, now they're thinking to themselves, what happens if I bump into them? What if I see someone like them? What if I meet? So there's a lot we need to definitely make room for. And it's painful, Linky, because emotional trauma, emotional issues or wounds are not visible to the naked eye. People can pretend to be okay and go about their
Mm.
days. Hence, it's very key for us to be very sensitive and very just pay attention to how they speak, their actions. It's very key. What is out of character? That's why we don't just emphasize on looking after the survivor themselves, but even the caregivers around them, because they become the watchful eye just to take note of what is going on in their mind, what's taking place. Hence, we make sure that whenever we speak to survivors, we say, don't be isolated. Stop idling yourself and staying away from people. You need a community. You need a family that will be with you, because emotional support is by far emotional quotient very key for you to be able to develop and work through, because you do spiral down every now and then. But we walk the journey with individuals. There's no one size fits all, unfortunately. Very tailor-made. Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's necessary to understand
Mm.
emotional needs, and if there's a scar in the roots, then it will always pop up, and if it's not been dealt with. What would you say, what role does faith, spirituality, and mindset play in the healing process for women coming out of abusive homes?
Linky, it plays a massive role, and we need to be very open and upfront about these discussions, because a human being in essence has three parts to them. It's the mind, the body, and the spirit, or some would say the soul in essence. Because there are certain things that we will be able to, like I said, we can put any elasto plus on you, we can put a bandage on the physical wound, but there are scars that run so deep, because there are some individuals who are victims or survivors who come and tell us, listen, it's strange, but can I just say this as well? My grandmother was abused. My mother was abused. Now I'm abused. What does that mean? So now you see that it's sort of a generational trauma that we are noting, and a generational experience or an encounter we are noting. Hence, we always encourage our victims that, what, regardless of your faith that you belong to, but have a place you belong to, a stance you are, because there are questions you have that no textbook might be able to answer, that no bandage might be able to even heal. But when you sit with individuals who are then assigned and trained enough to understand that spiritual side of things, you'll be able to then be able to douse the flames that you have with those uncertain questions. Because you know what, the fear of the unknown is a reason why so many of our survivors, they tend to now fall victim to secondary, abuse somewhere else. Or they in turn, we always say hurting people hurt others. They now become perpetrators to others themselves. We've seen, Linky, I've had the opportunity to go into correctional services, the maximum prisons here in Mpumalanga. And when we walked in, we went deep into the prison cells. It's dark, there's no light there. And we've got criminals who are incarcerated there, and they've been serving for quite a while. They still remain there for life. And when we sit and we engage with them, the first thing they say is, I was abused too. So I thought this is how things are. This is life. And I was going to allow it to just be me. So you see why it's important for us to ensure that we sit with individuals and address each and every aspect of the human life, which is, as I mentioned, the mind, the body, and the spirit. We cannot focus on one area and forget about the other. We are very inquisitive beings. We want to know. We want to ask the question, Why did this happen to me? Why? There's so many things that we want to address. So if we avoid the other, eventually it will scream for help. It will cry out. So faith-based support plays a major role. Hence, that is what we focus on in our wellness center as well. We prioritize it so much, and I believe that is why a lot of the referrals we get, it's in line with those who are saying, I need that spiritual side of support. I need to know what is taking place with my spirit. I feel bruised, but where is my spirit? Am I still there or not? Key questions we address. Thank you, Linky.
No, that is very important. I agree with you. I love your quote that you say, the rise of women does not mean the fall of men. How
Yes.
can we involve men and boys in breaking the cycle of violence? Because we know fatherless
Mm.
homes really creates problems for our teenagers and then later adults.
Yes. Yes. I'm so grateful that you're saying in fatherless homes, Linky, because you know what? We grew up knowing that the father from next door is also our father. And that's the understanding we had within society. However, now I don't know if it's modern times or what has taken over, it's every man for themselves. As long as it's not my child, I'll stay away. So we need to be able to acknowledge and definitely face the truth that in as much as we're saying that right now society is filled with fatherless individuals, back then there were fathers who would go for the whole year and not come back until it's December as well, because they are working far away from home. So during that time, there needs to be father figures within society. Hence, I always emphasize on the rise of women does not mean the fall of men, because it's a call to say, listen, men, we understand, the burdens and the weight of society that is on you as well. We cannot let you walk this alone. Hence, we are rising up to the occasion as women. We are not going to keep pointing fingers and saying, it's men, it's men, it's men. We are seeing right now as a commission a rise of women who are, violating and assaulting and unfortunately also, murdering their own children. There's a major rise in that we need to also discuss. So it's not just about gender anymore. It's the human being. Hence, I mentioned we need to address the spirit. So it's very key for us to, first of all, be able to help define what is positive masculinity. We need to ensure that we also address that, because yes, there are bad individuals out there, but there's more good. And I know, because yes, identify with this. There's a reason why they clicked on this link to hear more about what role can they play, what can they do. There's a lot of men's forums that are out here. And of course, if you look back at what we come from, as I mentioned, the traditional leadership, it's mostly men who are saying we're taking a stand against. And it's so funny how, Linky, men are the one who call each other out much more than we do. Men will literally say, no, you're out of order. They'll even want to, be vigilantes and want to, take someone's life to say, how dare you rape this child? How dare you do this? But for us as women, we become afraid of, oh no, I do not want to be too involved in her life. You can see a woman is being abused next door and you're saying, listen, don't you want to leave that? You're afraid to speak up. Men call each other out. So we want to encourage that men don't stop doing that. We need more of your voices. We need more of you to take your stand. And we appreciate you and we see you, we recognize you. Because when we do that, then the boy child will also be repositioned to understand the family dynamics. Because right now, what we're fighting is the structure of family. Hence, I said the father next door was also our father. Very key for us to note and celebrate. We need to go back to that stance so that we're able to call each other out. When the father next door says, no, take care of your teenager, or bring your teenager here, I'll sort him out. Trust him to sort him out. That's what happened. That's what used to happen. But right now, it's every man for himself. So that's what we do. It's very important for us to also know that with men, as I mentioned, the accountability circles they have, the brotherhood they have is very unique. As women, we will fight over you. We wore the same outfit at this event, and you knew I bought this dress. Whereas with men, they will laugh at each other and say, "Oh, you too, you too." So there's a different psyche that men have. They're able to get through things, and we need to investigate that. We need to interrogate that, and we need to honestly uplift that, because it is part of positive masculinity. So I think that's where we need to definitely start. Hence, I always echo those words. Thank you, Linky.
Okay. So you often help survivors also beyond justice with counseling, mentorship, and hope. What systems do you think South Africa's need to strengthen to support the survivors holistically?
The biggest systems that we need to definitely strengthen is the one-stop service centers. That is where an individual can come in if they've just been violated, and they can get subs in that space. They can actually get counseling in that same space. They can get DOH, so a nurse will be there available to help them as well. Forensic support will be there to help them get the necessary swabs in place. The necessary forms will be filled in. So we need to strengthen that one-stop hub that we have. If we need more of those centers so that people know that if I just go and go straight to this center in this place, then I'll be able to get all the support or help that I need. Because some complain and say, I have to go first to SAPS, and then I have to go, clinic is far, or I have to go for support. These places are far from each other. But if it's a one hub, then definitely we can make a lot of progress. Not only that, when we're doing our investigations within SAPS themselves, we also found that it becomes quite difficult for them to juggle between someone has just been stabbed, someone has just been, and then you coming in here as a rape victim. Who do they assist first, because there's limited resources? So manpower is needed. We need individuals who will be focused solely on addressing and assisting those who are victims of, rape or assault and so on, and other forms of abuse. Very key for us to note. And then, of course, the investment of, we need to be professionalizing counselors. If you come into subs, you need to be confident that if I go to the GBV desk, that subs official that I'll come upon is trained enough to know how to deal with a victim. Those things are lacking at this moment in time. So we are hoping that that becomes something that we strengthen as South Africa. It's very key, it's definitely needed. And then, of course, the mandatory recurring training for trauma counseling, regardless of what role you're playing. Hence, we say we keep workshopping faith-based leaders. We have to keep workshopping traditional leaders. We have to keep workshopping everyone, because they become the first point of contact. But if they do not know how to deal with trauma, they will do whatever they can as well from what they feel might be right, but that might not be the solution that is required for then the victim or survivor themselves. So I think we need to strengthen those. It's very key. At the end of the day, we want to care for these survivors. We don't want them to, after reporting, they feel let down, they feel that the system is broken. Once we have those one-stop hubs, and then we have people who are really passionate and definitely skilled and very professional in handling victims or survivors when they come to, as I mentioned, SAPS, the GBV desk and so forth. They need to know what is the next step. What do I do with an individual now? There needs to be a ripple effect. There cannot be any, bottlenecking along the way. It needs to all flow. Yes, thank you, Linky.
Yes. I agree with you. I know our social workers sometimes struggle to get help when wanting to open up cases, because I think that system is a bit broken. What message do you have for a woman who is listening today and believes she is too broken, too scared, or too damaged to start over?
Linky, what I would first of all say is you are not broken. You are wounded. That's the first thing that I'd say. Broken fractures, we see a bone gets broken and so forth. But for you, you are not broken. You are wounded, and a wound can heal. It takes time, of course. It takes intensive support, a lot of work, but you can heal. That's the biggest step or thing that I want to definitely emphasize on. And as I mentioned, the fact that there might be someone who might watch this, and you found it on your device, it means that your spirit is still fighting. You still want to heal. The fact that you are sitting here as a representative of SRVF, it means that you are still committed to this call to assist and help those who are survivors. It says a lot. So it's very key for us to understand that. And then, you know what? This is a new journey that you are on as a survivor. Hence, I said, what, being self-aware, self-recognition, and allowing yourself to grieve is very key, because on the other side will be someone completely new that you have to relearn. There'll be new mannerisms, new ways of thinking, new habits developed that you'll have to either trim off, deal with, but one way or the other, you have to face yourself. Facing a perpetrator will not change anything. Asking them the question why will not change anything. When I have these workshops, I always say, you cannot go to a snake and ask it, why did you bite me? Why did you infuse your venom into my system? The snake will not answer you. And that's the truth we need to all have. It's just the nature that you were dealing with at this moment in time is to find out while you heal, what are you doing about yourself? Do not allow that venom to corrupt your own nature. Do not allow it to make you self-destructive, because that's the aim of venom in itself, to crush and break an individual. Hence, we're saying we celebrate them as survivors. You overcame the venom. That's the biggest thing that we always emphasize on. Thank you, Linky.
So for me, I'm a child protection social worker here at SABF and the coordinator. So we also know that there's a lot of children who witness violence
Yes.
often and then also experience the hidden trauma of that. Can you help us with the warning signs that a child is being emotionally harmed by GBV at a house or a home?
Children who witness a lot of violence within the home, it might not even be physical, the constant fighting as well. That is part of, it shapes their mind. So we tend to see it mostly in what we call the behavioral regression. That's where we get to see a child being overly clingy. The bed wetting also just takes place. So behavioral regression is very, very important for us. Children indicators are much easier to point out because as adults, we train ourselves to be okay and pretend. But for children, you get to see a lot of the behavioral regressions that take place. So it's very key for us to note that. Another thing is also the hypervigilance or the anxiety that takes place. Some children become very jumpy, or overly watchful. They're not playful, they're not free. That's what we say. We need a child to be as free as possible. But if a child is now carrying the burden of being the watchdog of the family, something is wrong. Children are not supposed to be bearing the burdens of their parents. And some children, unfortunately, have to now take over and do that. And hence you can see with how they speak or how they carry themselves. The mannerisms are very key for children for us to note. And then, of course, some children start having this aggression and conduct issues even at school as well, for those who are at school level, ages. So for those ones, we definitely do find out, why is this child so aggressive? Some become bullies in essence because they feel like, I can't protect my mother at home, I can't protect my sisters, but I'll protect myself here at school, or I won't allow anyone to treat me the way that my father treats my mother. So it's key for us to note those behavioral changes that take place. And then, of course, one of the biggest things medically or health-wise is a somatic complaints. So those are those headaches that come in and out every now and then. We need to note that the constant stomach aches, the body is unwell. What I always say is, if mental health is deteriorating, it will evidently affect physical health. So it's very key for us to note that. So a child might not speak in essence, but pay attention when you're giving them work. What are they writing? What are they expressing in their homeworks? The neatness, all of those things play a major role for children. Thank you, Linky.
What practical steps can schools, social workers, and community members take when they suspect a child is living in a violent household?
Ooh, Linky, this one, I've had so many fights. I'll call it out for what it is with the Department of Education, because as I said, there needs to be a ripple effect. There needs to be systems in place that we know one after the other, something must happen. There are so many cases. There's a child right now who's 10 years old, pregnant. And then you ask yourself, why didn't the teacher or the principal report this matter? They're keeping quiet about it, because I understand some of these individuals, for example, deep rural areas I'm talking about, they don't want the child to give birth in hospital. They'll say, no, you give birth here at home so that we hide the family embarrassment, so they don't go to clinics, they don't go to medical support or help. So they continue going though to school. So this means that the school plays a major role in dealing with these matters or cases. So the first thing for us is for them to also understand that school play a major role in reporting abuse or even suspected abuse. So this means that it might not be the case, but if you suspect something, rather report and apologize later than to be quiet and have to do vigils, night vigil for someone. I always encourage that. So schools play a very important role, and there is a law that definitely stipulates, the child, the law that says, if you keep quiet and you do not now go and open a case or go and speak to someone about it, then you will be held accountable or you'll be held liable for it. So it's very key for us to be able to understand and unpack that. And then, of course, moving on to social workers as well, they must conduct a very key, I think the risk assessment that social workers conduct is very important because there's two cases we're dealing with, and we noted that the social worker, I do not know what happened. She did not write the complete information or details that no, this uncle comes back every December. So when he comes back, because he's bringing money and food, then the family continues keeping quiet while he continues raping the child. So now we have to say, sit down with the social worker and say, why didn't you add that input? Why didn't you add this information? And she would come and say, no, the family said I mustn't because if I write it down, will I now for my salary give them money for food? So you see, there's a lot of conflicts as well that do take place, but we encourage social workers rather write it down, jot it down. The rest we will support and assist you. You will not be threatened and threatened over and over for what you are signed for what you studied and worked so hard for as a social worker. It's not a one night, a fly by night profession that you do. It's very key. So we need to put that respect back to who social workers are, write the necessary risks that are in place, and ensure that you do apply for that safety plan for the victims. It's very key. Otherwise, we'll keep recycling the same children going through the same thing over and over again. And then, of course, lastly, what I'd also recommend is that community members must also, confidently and anonymously, if they need to, report these cases too. Hence, I said, whether you suspect it or you've witnessed it, reporting is a must. We cannot have this bystander syndrome anymore. We keep saying
Yeah.
our children are our future, but what role are we playing to protect their future as well? Thank you, Linky.
I think a lot of people are scared to report, but
Yeah.
I also just want to mention this, that according to Section 110, there is certain professions that must report,
Yes.
and they can get into trouble if they do not report. But for your community members, if you made a report in good faith, believing that there's something going on, you cannot be held responsible. So nobody can open up a case against you or anything like that when you report the suspected abuse. So even if there's just a suspicion, you are allowed to report that and nothing is going to happen to you.
True.
Okay. And then how can we empower mothers who are survivors of GBV to also protect and emotionally support their children?
That's a very important question, Linky. The first one would always be the mother-child trauma therapy. Hence I said, being a caregiver to a victim or survivor is not easy. You too need to be workshopped. You too need to be prepared and understand what is the next step thereafter. Because there are some mothers who say, I was at work and I came back and I found this incident has happened. Now there's that guilt, there's that, grief that they're also going through. And at times, they start, the self-blaming, and which definitely also leads to the self-harm. So it's very important for us to definitely emphasize on the mother-child trauma therapy, which is able to now address the trauma and establish a safer bond, because bonds change after trauma as well. So it's very key for us to just walk them through it. They have to relearn each other, and we encourage the mother to reconnect with their child or children as well, which is very important. And then, of course, what is very key, I know there's no one size fits all approach to this, but parenting skills training is also needed, for those non-violent communication and explaining violence to a child. It's very key for us to have those trainings as well, because from that parenting skills training that is focused specifically on behavior, as a mother now, you'll know how to deal with a child who's now, breaking out. As I said, there will be behavioral change. There'll be a lot that takes place. So we have to train the mothers to know how to deal with that, how to address it, how to unpack it, and how to also move forward and get further support if need be. Very key. And then, of course, we have to ensure that there is financial and housing security, which is very key. And it serves as, I think, the greatest act of protection. Some of these mothers and children have to be, relocated from the areas that they're living in and shifted to another space. Hence, we work closely as well with the, the COSTA, the Human Settlement Department as well. Very very key. And then, of course, the custodians of children, which is the Department of Social Development, very key for them to assist and note that children need to definitely be then just reintegrated back into schools or society, very key as well. Yeah, those are I think the biggest things, the empowerment for the woman. But I think for me, the biggest thing is that we need to reestablish that bond between the mother and the child. Yes.
Then we also know that emotional, financial, and institutional abuse are often harder to recognize. So how can the women, identify subtle forms of abuse
Yes.
before they escalate?
I think when it comes to the economic topic, for me, it goes both ways. Men and women, that abuse is there. We've got this statement we call, I'm sure the others will know it, that right now in society, there's this understanding that no, indoor must, meaning that come highways, come running water, whatever it might be, the man must make sure that I have money for my nails, or else he's not a real man. So we need to also unpack that abuse that is there as well, that we as women also inflict. However, the biggest thing we need to start off, the emotional, psychological one, is the gaslighting. That's where someone makes you question your own sanity, or what, they basically encourage you to be isolated, and you slowly withdraw not just from society or family around you, but even from yourself, because now you start questioning, why do I want to do certain things? Why do I want to eat breakfast, for example? Why must I have food to get clothes? All of these things need to be, you start questioning the basics of life, the necessities. And then, of course, financial, control over access, and the allowances that are given, for example, or preventing someone from going to work, or even someone who wants to maintain an economic, dependency. Then individuals start saying, no, you cannot work, you cannot be there, you cannot do this. So that control over someone's finances is things that we need to definitely look into. And we were dealing with a case where we witnessed someone where she was told that, listen, you cannot go and work, because what if you're working and my friends see you as a waitress? I don't want to be embarrassed. Now you need to stay at home. So you see how these things start, quite small, but we need to address them as well. And then, of course, we have what we call the institutional side, which is the systematic dismissal or retaliation after speaking up in a professional setting. So it's not just the abuse within, a romantic relationship, but even in the workplace, where you are undermined, as a woman. Hence, as a commission, we do address what is the workplace, intimidation that women also go through when they have to speak up. You are a CEO, but you're not granted the opportunity to make necessary decisions. You are told, no, don't worry about it. The COO, who's a man, will handle that. Don't worry about it. So you're being silenced as well. So it's very key for us to be able to point out when these things are taking place, when you're not able to fully express yourself, when you're being undermined, your decision making. I believe it's key. If someone is not making the right decisions, rather teach me, right? Than for you to be quiet. So we encourage that. But if someone's not willing to teach you, instead they keep belittling your decisions, they keep undermining you, and they tell you that you do not deserve certain things, that is major red flags that we need to definitely address. So this topic of, at the subtle forms of abuse, it's very key when it comes to economic stances. Very, very broad.
Thank you so much. And then our last question for you is, as Commissioner for Gender Equality, what legislative or community-based changes do you believe are most urgently needed to protect women and children from all the forms of abuse?
Because the general answer for why did this happen to me is always it's socioeconomic issues, socioeconomic issues. I believe we need to definitely make provisions for the economic abuse that does take place. We need stronger legislature that will be able to explicitly recognize and criminalize financial and economic abuse under the Domestic Violence Act. It needs to be made, available, because we need to ensure that we have, rapid protective orders against financial sabotage. We need to voice them out. There are some individuals who their partner has access to their bank accounts or information. They go to the bank and say, listen, close or shut down this account. And they do that. So we need to ensure that we have laws in place that will protect an individual from that. There are people whose SASSA cards are taken or stolen. The children's SASSA cards are stolen. So we need to make more provisions for that. And we need to have that as part and parcel of punishable, law. It's very key for us to have that. And then, of course, the community-based urgency there needs to be mandatory prevention education so that we're able to implement a mandatory life skills curriculum in all schools that focuses specifically on what is gender equality, what is consent, and then also non-violent communication. Very key for us to be able to address those. But I think if legislators tightens themselves on addressing this economic abuse provision, we'll be able to cover up so much, because some women go into workplaces because they're trying to cover up at home, and when they get there, they're now victims of sexual abuse in the workplace, because now they're told tit for tat, if you want to be hired, sleep with this individual. So you see, now it becomes a major cycle. So the economic stance of our society needs to be addressed. We need to unpack any mishaps that do take place, that do often lead to these sexual abuse cases that are there. Yes.
Thank you so much for all of your answers. I just want to open up the floor. If there's any other questions from the participants, you can maybe just raise your hands or just unmute. The setting is now there so that you can unmute yourself. Any questions? Doesn't seem like that. I just want to thank you once again for writing yourself and for this webinar and the conversation that we had. It's really impactful. And thank you so much for what you're doing to the community, reaching out and helping the survivors of GBV and just not only GBV, but everything else that you're doing. I think you are incredible, and I think you're doing incredible work. And thank you for what you are doing out there as well. You are just muted.
There we go. There we go. Thank you so much, Linky. Once again, I think I'll have to definitely emphasize and say thank you so much for creating this platform for us to engage, especially within the 16 days of activism against GBVF. It's very key for us to unpack that. And I'm grateful because slowly but surely, I'm hearing community members reaching out and saying, you are shifting our mindset as well, because we had previously thought it's just men and children, I mean, women and children we're focusing on, but now we're roping in men as well, because, there's studies that were made as well that it's often boys who are sexually assaulted much more than girls. It's just that boys don't go and report. So hence we're so passionate about the work that we're also in. But I believe it's also a call of duty. The Lord has chosen us, and we are definitely going to continue with this amazing assignment. At the end of the day, we need to be able to work together. We cannot work in silos. We have to be open and, call each other out. I appreciate that. Hence, when I started my role as a commissioner, I had to subpoena SAPS, I had to subpoena NPA and DOJ to find out why are there withdrawal of cases. There shouldn't be any withdrawals. It was very uncomfortable to do so, but we are on the right track. We're getting there. So progress is needed. If there is an issue, let us rather address the system in itself that is broken. It can be fixed. It definitely can be fixed. We just need people who will be skilled enough, passionate enough, and called enough to serve in that call of duty. There is a major sense of urgency for our children, and we need to be able to take a stand for them. And if we do not, who will? That is always a question I ask as well. But thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you all soon as well. Thank you, Linky.
Thank you so much. I just want to also invite all of you on the webinar currently. We will be having another session tomorrow with a man, actually, that was part of a violence situation. So you are very welcome. Follow us on Facebook, and then you will get all of the information there. Thank you so much, and have a lovely day.
Bye.
Bye.
Children. Behind every statistic is a story, a family, a life changed forever. For more than a century, the SAVF has stood as a pillar of hope, protection, and dignity, walking alongside survivors long before the 16 days of activism begins and long after it ends. At the SAVF, our mission is simple yet powerful: to protect the vulnerable, restore dignity, and empower survivors to rebuild their lives. Every year, thousands of South African women and children turn to the SAVF for safety, counseling, social support, and intervention. Our social workers stand at the front line, listening, guiding, and advocating when voices are silenced. Because GBV is not just a crime, it is a human rights violation, one that destroys families, futures, and communities. Through early intervention programs, trauma counseling, outreach services, safety planning, and partnerships with communities, SAVF offers survivors not only help, but hope. The 16 Days of Activism is more than a campaign. It is a call to action. A reminder that ending violence starts with all of us, in our homes, our schools, our workplaces, and our communities. You are not alone. At SAVF, someone is always ready to listen, support, and help you reclaim your strength. Stand with us. Speak out. Support survivors. Choose courage. Choose compassion. Choose change. During these 16 days and every day, the SAVF stands firm against violence and for the future of every woman and child in South Africa.